All right, folks. Today you're going to wonder, why is Miss Katie so dressed up? Why is Miss Katie so dressed up?
Just felt like being pretty.
And what day is today?
Saturday.
And what do we do every Saturday?
We go to Longhorn for lunch.
Every Saturday. Without fail, because we love the little female bartender, Steffi. We get to talk to Steffi that way. But that means we have to do, as you hear me moving my mother's captain chair around in the background, that means we have to do what before we go there, little girl?
Game.
We have to do a game video, don't we? And what do we have today?
Twilight Struggle. Horn of Africa.
Does Horn of Africa resonate with you at all?
You've been there. You said it's a godless place.
Yeah, it was not a fun place. We'll just let it go at that. It was not a fun place to go to. But I was personally very unexcited when we got this game at first, because I thought it was going to be from the GWOT era. It's not from the GWOT era. And GWOT, of course, stands for
Global War on Terror.
Global War on Terror, which was a misnomer if there ever was one, but we won't get into that because I don't have that long, and I don't want our viewers to fall asleep as I slog through that. So does that feel very heavy to you?
No.
No, it's a fairly light one, isn't it? And it's from our friends at GMT, and we want to thank, as always, Tony Kernis and Elizabeth, who sends them to us, which means in the boxes we get lots of ghost poop. Lots of ghost poop. And what do we do with the ghost poop?
We bag it up.
We bag it up, and when we send things to other people, we use it to protect it, because on the rare occasion when we sell games or when we move things around,
Have things to ship.
makes for a lovely thing. Now, what we'll notice, and I will have Miss Katie look at it then when she goes ahead and stands over on this side, is the difference between this game and Twilight Struggle, the original, in terms of the mass of the map size. But that doesn't really matter at the moment. So, as always, what do we say?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and we thank you, and I'll be talking to you in just a moment. Hi, folks. I wait for that magic ping when Miss Katie hits it, and she sits there and is diligently watching it work, and her eyes just got really big, so that must mean it is working. It is Saturday, June the 24th. We thank you, as always, if you were watching, because otherwise you wouldn't be hearing me talk to you, would you? Now, we have today Twilight Struggle Red Sea, and it is Conflict of Horn of Africa. As you heard Miss Katie prattle on about it, I spent time in the Horn of Africa, and that's all we really need to talk about. Ambushes in the Horn of Africa are much like ambushes in Iraq or Afghanistan, except it's much flatter, and it's a lot hotter. But we were truly unexcited to get this game at first, because we thought it was going to be, as we noted, from my time. It wasn't. And so therefore then we got really very, very excited about this, because it's a time period that I found fascinating, and that is pre-army, my era between transitioning from college to graduate school to the army. So it's a very exciting time period as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm going to show you here. Here's the game map. Yep. Helps so I don't have it fall off. Small little game map. Then, there is, I'll show you its size compared to the Twilight Struggle. Can they see all that, Miss Katie?
Yes.
That is the difference in size, as we try to hold it as well as we can, between the two. So, much like Twilight Struggle, it has your tracks. There's your space track down here, your turn track, your action track, and victory points. And of course you have your lines. You have two sections here. You have the Middle East over here. I did it again. I did it to myself this morning. How about that? Middle East over here, Africa over here, And in reality, Egypt is really in both, which is, in my mind, is truly in both areas. And in fact, it is listed on the Twilight Struggle map as transitioning over to that way via Israel. But what I really like about this, what they did here, was you look down here, and some of the things such as coups and how to place the influence markers and the replacement, not replacement, but what's the word they use there? Realignment roles. It's like sometimes I need to have my back realigned, I think. But all that is nicely at the side. Nice setup for both players because it is on, and we'll open the map again. That is on both sides of the map. And even for the solo player, it's nicely set up. I think it's an attractive looking map. Functional to me. Your box, standard GMT box, you heard it fall. No dents, yay, it's not a flimsy Euro box. And the back is very nice. And of course they say 35 minutes. So that means it will take me at least an hour to play. And I'm expecting it will take me maybe an hour, hour and a half to get used to going through the system and working through it again. Even though I like Twilight Struggle, it's been maybe a decade since I played Twilight Struggle. It's been probably since before I retired from the Army in 2014. It says it has the highest rating by them for solitaire and the lowest for complexity. And 1 to 2 players, and I would never have Miss Katie play this with me because she would look at me as if I had lobsters crawling out of my forehead. It has 55 game cards. Some of these, the Lion Followers. Who of you are old enough to remember Haile Selassie? The Lion of Ethiopia, the Emperor of Ethiopia. Yeah. Card on him. Detente. Remember Detente? Miss Katie is sort of a look like maybe she does. You'll remember this one. We are the world.
Dreadful, stupid song.
You know, and has anyone cured starvation yet? Well,
yeah.
No. They're not going.
That a lot of big names wouldn't have part of.
Yes. Soviets airlift Cubans. Not really quite in on this map, but I like the use of the card. Where we spent a year plus.
CENTCOM.
CENTCOM. And we even have a CENTCOM patch rolling around here somewhere. The Carter Doctrine. Anyone remember it? Quick? Nope, didn't think so. And a picture we see a lot, and kind of a tongue-in-cheek, the French Connection, but it's not
Gene Hackman.
But it is not the Gene Hackman one.
I love Gene Hackman.
It is the ability of the French Foreign Legion and the French to provide their muscle, which they do very well at times. Now, 2 rule books. Well, really. There is the actual rule book, which is 16 pages, replete with examples. I like examples. Examples help me.
I don't think I've ever seen a word game with 2 rule books.
Yeah, GMT tends to do that every so often. So they have both a rule book, and then they have what's called, let's get the official term here.
It says solo rules on the
outside. It is, right, very good. You caught that. Solo rules.
Except for the solitaire player?
Right, and...
See, I do pay attention.
She did pay attention there. Boy, she's going to want 2 drinks at lunch today. And background booklet, which talks about a nice little analysis of each card. Okay, I love those. It's like when we got the original Panzer Blitz and it had the little Germans and Soviet tanks at the side, so how many were produced and when they were produced.
We're happy for you, sir.
Yeah, makes my heart all a twitter. 2-player aid cards, yay! But 1, the card play summary. Lord, it's long. It's a long one. And then the actual turn. And how many turns are in this game?
2?
2. So if I was a horse, I would be pawing the floor or slapping myself or something, so we won't go there. But there are only 2 turns in this game, so that's why it's 35 minutes. Miss Katie, as you noticed, actually talked about the solo rules. She's really trying hard today, folks. And so here's the, if you're playing as the Soviet, here are the American solo bot. If you're playing as the American, here are the Russian Soviet bots. Okay, nice, and it tells you how to play that. I tend not to use those. I like playing against myself, being both sides. But for people who want a different experience, they often work. And of course, the U.S. Playable Events table, which I'm reading, which means the side you're looking at is the USSR Playable Events table. You know, good stuff here, folks. I like simple games. It will take me longer than I want, just because I will work laboriously through it. 2 books. I love Jonathan House. This book doesn't completely comport because it's a military history of the Cold War from 1944 to 1962, and I need to see if House has done a follow-on volume. But it's the best military history of any part of the Cold War I've found so far. How do we know that it's good? It's still in my library. It's never been sold or given away on a single move. The second book, which I'm a little less enamored with, is On Arn Vestad, winner of the Bancroft Prize, and not Dave Bancroft, who was a shortstop for the New York Giants in the 1920s. It's, well, if Niall Ferguson is really saying great things about it, then I'm even more ambivalent about it. I like him as a historian. He's a crap person. He and Boris Johnson probably deserve each other in England. Bojo, who used to be the Prime Minister of England, and then he had Partygate, where they were partying all the time while all the rest of England was locking down. So, but it's, for lack of a better book, this is the go-to. But know that it's not that he has axes to grind as a historian, but I think sometimes he doesn't fully understand what went on in the era, or the depths of what some of the other nations sank to. So I'm a little iffy on this book, but it is probably the best book of its type, said with my jaws clenched. Oh, yeah, God, my jaws hurt right now. So, still worth your time to pick up, but read it with a jaded eye. So there we have it, folks. We'll be talking more about some of this other stuff. As always, we thank you. You all are blessings, and we're just happy to do this stuff. Thanks. Bye. Folks, because I had everything laid out, we forgot the counters. They're standard Twilight Struggle counters. Nothing sensational. They're functional. They work. And this is it. This is all the counters. Not enough even for my cats to be too interested in. Thanks, folks. Good morning, folks. I just wanted to give you some quick perspective on the new Twilight Struggle Red Sea Conflict in the Horn of Africa game by GMT. And look at the map size for it compared to the Daddy. The Daddy is, and I will actually take it into the corner here. You can see it is probably what, 1/3 in total, 40% of the other one. And of course, the box art. But you can see how small it is in comparison to the original game. What's interesting about this map is you notice it is only on the Horn of Africa. And we have the Middle East part over here, duh, and the Africa part. What's really good is the action round track, DEFCON status, a little simpler compared to say here, because there you've got the turn record track and the space record track. And of course, over there, you the action record track. What I found really good here, and it's on both player sides, is you have this easy to use how to place influence markers, your realignment rules on things, and your coup attempt. Whoever did the artwork for this, I think, had a much better feel for the challenges inherent in the Twilight Struggle game, because although it seems somewhat intuitive if you grew up in the era, it's not. And this one is perhaps even more so because it's an isolated small one. So kudos to them for the way they did this. And of course, as we turn it around again, it's aesthetically pleasing, isn't it? Now, I should also note, as I'll probably already have noted when Miss Katie films me a little later, is we spent time in the Horn of Africa in the global war of terror. So when I first saw this game, I said, not playing this. It's going to be like games from Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's going to make me uncomfortable or something like that. And then happily discovered it's anything but. So let's look at some of the other components to the game here. Of course, if it's a GMT game, we know there will be cards. Player aid cards, yay! Card play summary. We'll look at the cards in a moment. But boy, there's sure a lot of stuff there on how to play a card, isn't there? This is why I say that the back of the for 30 minutes is definitely not true for starting, but this is useful. This is useful in terms of getting started if you've never played this game before. And of course, gotta like this one. It is your, there are this many turns in the game. Two turns. And so this tells you exactly how you go about playing all 2 turns. Really very simple, but, and of course there are that 2-player cards because it's set up as a 2-player game. Then there are the USSR player event cards, and then there are the playable events and US playable events. Then there is the, let me get this one out for you. If you're playing solo, the USSR action round priorities, the space selection 1, and the same for if you do that with the allies. And I'm not going to do that myself. I'm going to play it the way I want to solo. Let's look at components. The components, well, gee, they look like, you know, the same as at Twilight Struggle. So that's good. You've got your military ones, you've got your space ones, you've got your DEFCON status, and you've got various other markers, and of course your influence markers. And then there's the player cards. And the first one that we look at, the only one we're going to look at because we haven't opened them yet, is the Peace Corps. Peace Corps, as an example, would allow you to remove a USSR one. So let's go ahead and open those up here. Now let's look at, again, mid-war car, my favorite, the Ogden War, where you have 2 Marxist nations going to war with each other. Everybody always said, well, communists don't fight communists. Well, that wasn't true. Look at the Amur River in 1969. And it's also kind of most today goes to the theory of the McDonald's. That countries that have McDonald's don't go to war with each other. Then, of course, we get the stagflation. And if you look at this, high food prices eat up our wages, stagflation. Gee, this is what we have under the current administration, where food prices have doubled or tripled or more in some cases, and wages is thing. But people don't seem to mind much, which is really, really weird. But I also like the space race track here. It's very nicely done. And none of those are exactly the same as on the previous one. Now, something to look at here that I think I didn't perhaps give the full thrift to was the map key. This tells you how and where things connect up, and that, as they know in the rule, that things may not necessarily connect up geographically in some ways the way you think. Like the Sudan on the map connects up, has a regional connection really to Somalia. You might not think of that because of the kind of terrain across the way. You also look here in the Middle East, nobody really has that same kind of connection that from the Sudan to Somalia. And that Madagascar, of course, connects into Kenya and Somalia. Now, 2 rule books. There is the actual rule book of 16 pages, standard GMT, gives you a good quick start, punctuated by lots of good graphics, examples, relatively easy to get into. Even reading it at 11 o'clock at night last night, most of it works. It seems really very wordy at first. Now, if you play like Twilight Struggle, it doesn't seem at all wordy. For someone else, it seems like there's a lot. They just go into what I think is, it almost feels like too much detail, but I don't really think it is. Then, of course, there are the solo rules and background. It gives you your 2-player example of play. They make the concerted effort to make your entry into the game as simple as possible. And I like the fact that they do this. They also do a good solo opponent rules look over. Makes it easy. Again, programmatic learning. Program learning is always a good thing. And of course, then we come to the card background. The card background takes up how much? Almost half of the solo rule book. So if you feel intimidated by saying, oh my God, the rules are only 16 pages, but the solo rules and background booklet is 28, and you're just going, is this going to be another one of these where it's too much? No, it's not. It is not too much because it is well thought out, and the background book's material equals about half that book. So, 2 books to talk about. The Cold War by Arne Vestot. It's an okay book. Maybe a little bit better than okay. I don't think he fully understood the danger to the Soviet Union and that that communism presents to the world. He seems to sometimes skip over certain things. Maybe it's because he didn't fully live in that era. He's looking at it through a different lens. I'm not certain I fully like the lens. And the book at times seems breezy and skips over certain kind of things. But it is the only full history of the Cold War that I can endorse to anyone. And then, of course, for the military history of the Cold War, which only goes up to 1962, which doesn't fully go into our area, and that houses a military history of the Cold War, 1944-1962. Good book. I like Jonathan House. Sort of background for how much of this comes out with the post-colonial struggle but doesn't fully encompass this game, but still worthwhile. All right, folks, there we have it. As always, we thank you.